AFTV, James, another disappointing away loss, this time against a very, very poor Everton side. What do you make of it?
Killer blow. That was the knockout blow. I don't think it will be. I think it will get up. I think it will keep trying to fight. I think the ref will let it go on. But
like he's let it go on this far.
It's a knockout blow, that, for me. I think for a lot of fans. I've been looking at the reaction across online, everyone in the studio, and there's a pretty unanimous sense that we didn't just go and lose at Goodison. I know Arsenal are a better standard, but again, like Old Trafford, like Anfield, like the Etihad, like Brentford under the lights on a Friday night, first game, new stadium with fans, they can happen. But they don't always happen. You know, we've gone from saying it can happen to, well, it's always going to happen, so we may as well write it off. That was a knockout blow because the football was absolutely atrocious. I can tell you what Arsenal are going to do. Ramsdale has the ball. He's going to give it to one of White or Gabriel. Xhaka's going to drop into the left-back space, whoever the central midfielder is, and they're going to leave Partey horribly exposed. So when he gets the ball, he's pressed. So unless he shows a little bit of magic and sprays it wide, what's going to happen is probably going to go back until eventually we do get it to Saka. What's Saka going to do? Unless he's going to beat the fullback by himself, he's going to be one-on-one with the opposition fullback, and he's going to sort of stand over, he's going to threaten to do something, he's going to come inside, pass it back to Tomiyasu, because Tomiyasu doesn't overlap. Not his fault, it's the manager's instruction. You might come inside and give it to Odegaard. Then what's Odegaard going to do? Play the 1-2? No. He's going to go back to Tomiyasu because, again, it's predictable. It's the same thing. It's the same patterns. I showed in the week that Odegaard didn't pass the ball to Aubameyang once in the Man United game because they're told to play on completely different sides of the pitch. There is no cohesion. There's no fluidity. There's nothing natural about the way we play football. Sometimes you've got to go out and be a kid again. Let's play football. You play, right? You know when you have a game where I was playing on Sunday, I'm not that good. I can play, I'm okay. But I was having one of those games where I thought, it's not really happening for me on the right, I'll just drift to the left. You know what, the team would kind of work it out. Because sometimes football's about that. We won 3-0, by the way. Sometimes football is about that. It's about figuring it out for yourselves. And we are one of the most overcoached, over-engineered, drilled to within an inch of our life teams I've ever seen. It is worse than it was under Unai Emery. And people are going to say, this is reactionary. You weren't feeling this bad after United. And look at the run we were on. The run was trying to fix the rubbish before. The run wasn't building off a good base. It was clawing back something. So every setback like this, it takes us back into the red zone. We're back in the red zone. Not deeper than we've ever been before. I still think a year ago was worse. I still think after Villarreal was worse. I still think this is salvageable. Absolutely. But the problem is that this has happened on the back of Villarreal 6-7 months ago. Last year's run. Finishing 8th twice. That's the problem. It's a bit like, how do I put it? If someone, I've used the restaurant analogy before, but if you go to a restaurant and the food's shit, you might go back again and give him a second go. You might think the chef just had a bad day, whatever. If you keep going back and it's constantly shit, you've got to start looking at yourself. And I think the owners now need to start looking at it, and Arsenal fans need to start looking at this and going, 2 years, 220, 30 million pounds spent, we haven't progressed enough. Little bit, but not enough. And that's not good enough.
And I think we've got to raise the standards and start holding the club, not necessarily always the players or the manager, but the club as a whole to account a bit more.
Yeah, I think we do. I think there's ways to do that. It's not about losing context. The referee was awful today. Should have been a red card. We probably win the game. As bad as we were, we probably win the game.
With 11, right? Eddie scores that gaping goal is 2-0.
If Eddie Nketiah takes his chance, for Aubameyang to take that chance at the end, we're coming out with something salvage, not another L on the board. Six defeats in 15 games. That's not good enough. 4 points off top 4. I guess you call that somewhat touching distance. We look nothing like West Ham. We don't have United's players. We don't have Tottenham's manager. We don't have Leicester's owners. So what have we got? What have we got over them? That's the reality of it.
Can I ask you the fairest measurable? And by that I mean what you just said. We could measure it one way and say we're only 4 points off, and people can use that as, did you expect to be 4 points off top 4 in December? I'm going to hold my hands up and saying no. Yeah. But you can also look at it the way you looked at it. 6 defeats in the first 15 games, completely unacceptable. So what is the fairest measurable to fairly assess Arteta the squad and where we are at the moment?
The football we're playing. It's fundamentally that. Mr. Statman, glasses here, reading all these numbers, and forget that. It's the eyes. You look at the football, it's atrocious. Now, I really try to tell myself, because what kind of guy would I be here if after Newcastle I sit here and go, you know what, we were terrible, we were awful, 2-0 but we're rubbish, and then we won. The youngsters turned up, Tavares, Smith Rowe, Saka combining. The Emirates, it's a sunny, was it a sunny day? No, Watford was a sunny day. But all these things, we won, points on the board, closing in on top 4. Like, I've got to enjoy that. Yeah. Life's short, I've got to enjoy that. Like, football's not everything. I don't want to leave always going, well, we won, but that performance. Bigger things in life. But you should always talk about it, you should always acknowledge it. And in games like today, you stop and then you revert to the other things. You go, that was really bad, but let's be honest, it was coming. Mm-hmm. The performances in some of our wins, they've not been atrocious. There have just been like 45 really bad minutes in there, but then a good 45 after. Or there have been really bad mistakes, but we've kind of got through it. Yeah. Or we've got away with it. And there have been things that are ignorable because ultimately the team have found a way. Mm-hmm. And there have been things to enjoy. Today, there's nothing to enjoy. The club will probably stick by the manager. And let me say something about Arteta. Mikel Arteta, kill me in the comments, has done some good for this club. I believe he has, not in terms of results and all that, but I believe he has raised the standards in terms of work ethic on the pitch. I believe he has addressed the culture of the group, the age of the squad, the players who are here. We've been talking about in your fan cam. I like Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, White, Gabriel, Tierney, Tavares, Smith Rowe, Saka, Odegaard, Partey, Lokonga. I like all those players a lot. That's a lot more than I could have said a year ago. 100%. So I'm going to give him a lot of credit for that. I think Arteta would have made a superb director of football. He would have made a superb director of football. So I'm not here to manage the team. We'll get a coach, experienced coach to do it, but I'm going to pull the strings and do an Overmars. Do what Ralph Rangnick's been praised for doing so well. Obviously, he's done it in management as well. I think he'd have been great pulling the strings in that sense. So, as a manager, you can have that kind of influence to a degree, and I think he's done a lot of good in that end of things. But the football is as dry as I've ever seen it. Maybe, and I'll say this now, maybe tomorrow I'll regret some things I've said in this fan account in terms of how strong I've been about them, but I don't think so. I think this was a really bad one for the club. Season's not over, completely salvageable, but it was a really bad one for Arteta, and we've got to call it as is.
On to the next one.
This show is brought to you by Manscaped. Use the code AFTV for 20% off your order and free shipping at manscaped.com.